Welcome back to the Nebulum Podcast. If you're new here, on this podcast we talk about fulfillment, and our goal is to encourage and inspire people to walk a path of fulfillment and to follow their dreams. And to that end, we have discussions ranging from tactical and practical to philosophical and more thought experiments. And oftentimes it will just be us talking, and in the future we'll have guests to talk about their experience with walking their path. And so, welcome. I'm Zale.
I'm Grant.
And hope you enjoy. So, what are we talking about?
Today, you brought up the topic of not taking things too seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that's a key ingredient here on the path.
Yeah.
Is making sure that we don't get too serious, because then play starts to feel like work. So feel free. Would love to hear why that came up for you, where it came up for you, your journey with that.
Yeah. So this is more about mindset, right? And how mindset affects our energy levels, our stress levels, and the things we're willing to take risks on and pursue. For example, I think oftentimes we get held back by, let's say, social expectations. We may fear people will see us in a certain way, or ridicule us, or make us feel like what we're doing is silly, right? However, I think placing too much weight on these kinds of things inhibit us. So the idea of not taking things too seriously in this example would be, think of it as, let's say you were playing a video game. You wouldn't care too much about I don't want to say NPCs, but the NPCs that in the storyline of the game that are like, hey, don't do that. You know, you're playing a video game, right? And so in that setting, you don't feel like the stakes are high. So you are more likely to have fun, firstly, and follow the mission. Like, you're not going to get depressed at an AI character in the game saying, hey, don't do that. You know? And so
I think you're an NPC. I think you've just confirmed that you're an NPC.
And it's not that I'm saying think of people as NPCs, but slightly. I'm saying we can have a more similar mindset in life as well, where we take things as experiments. Because when you really think about it, what is the gravity of, let's say, being embarrassed? What will it change? Like, in 10 years, are you going to be like, oh, that time I was embarrassed at this party was the worst time of my life? I mean, maybe, but I would argue that if that's what you're thinking about 10 years from now, then you probably didn't do enough experimenting. You probably didn't do enough walking your own path. And so if you're walking your own path and following your dreams and growing and doing things that really fulfill you and things that feed your soul, these things become minor. And when we see it as more of a game, an experiment, a play, a way to learn, a teaching ground, a training ground, right? The present as a training ground for our future selves, then each individual thing gets less weighty, and it becomes merely a contributor to the person we're becoming. And I think that is a much more empowering mindset, and one that encourages nourishing and growth. So I'll pause there. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Some great thoughts by Mr. Zale. Yes. I actually didn't think the conversation was going to go in this direction immediately. So
Okay.
I had a different idea in my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that we have different ideas in our minds about this.
Absolutely.
I like how you started off by saying, okay, other people's opinions,
Mm-hmm.
don't take them that seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was thinking about don't taking things seriously, I was thinking about not taking our own
Our own goals.
things too seriously.
Yeah.
However, I'm okay with starting with others. You talked about treating it like a game, like an experiment, like a training ground, like this present moment as a training ground. That's a super empowering way to look at things. Often, if you take the example of like hardships or obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at it like, oh, I wish this hardship wasn't here. It's so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can look at it as, how we've talked about it before with reframing. This obstacle is here to help me grow.
Yeah.
And so when we go through hardships, this mindset of a training ground or experiment or a curriculum, the life curriculum, your life curriculum, can be super helpful for getting the most of each experience and not trying to push it away, but actually accepting it and growing from it. So I'm really glad that we're taking it in that direction at first. I totally agree in that get one's priorities straight. If your dream is to build something big, there are always going to be haters. So it's important that we don't make the haters' comments our first priority. The other thing is often people are just projecting their own shit onto you, their own lack of imagination or their own
fear
on to your dreams. And so not taking that seriously is important because you are not them.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to also get into, the not taking ourselves so seriously.
Yeah.
That one was my first thought when we talked about this topic, because all too often we have a plan and we become rigid in pursuing that plan. And in that rigidity, this dream that you had suddenly turns into work instead of play. And so I thought this topic for me is about turning work back into play, essentially treating life as a game, as what you were saying, a training ground.
Yeah.
That's a different way to put it, but it's the same vein of treating it like it isn't everything.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with my friend the other day about how things seem to actually fall into place much easier when we don't need things to happen a certain way, when we're not clinging to them to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And that I found really profound. It's almost like we give space for things to fall into place for us.
Yeah.
And I feel like that relates a lot to this topic.
Yeah.
Where I am so rooted in myself and I'm confident that whatever happens, I don't need to take it super seriously because I'm rooted in my own truth or my own being or my own journey. I have such confidence that I don't need to take each thing too seriously so that it hinders me in getting value from it. How does that sit with you? Like what I just said?
Yeah, I agree. I'm aligned. And it's funny. I also, when we brought up this topic, where your mind went first is also where my mind went first. However, when I started speaking, it's just the nature of the freestyle. Whatever came out first is what came out first. And it's funny, me thinking about that, I didn't necessarily cling to what I thought I needed to say. I didn't take it seriously enough it just went where it went. And we naturally came back around to it, right? And that, as you're talking about not clinging to things too much, that's an example of that. And the imagery that popped in my mind when you were talking about clinging to things too much, the first was when we cling to things too hard, we squeeze the life out of it. And then the second is when we cling to things too much, we miss the opportunity to resonate with it, because the clinging puts a lot of tension in our being, and it closes us. It doesn't make us open to listening to that thing that we're trying to cling to. We first have to listen to it, meaning we first have to understand it. We first have to feel it. We first have to just vibe with it. So I'm thinking about water. Might be getting into like just analogy land, but water. Let's say you want to be one with the water or something. You don't like try to just grab at the water, like, and you're not getting it, so you try to grab it harder and harder and harder. That's futile. You could just float and swim. Or when you're surfing, right, you first have to watch the waves, look at how they're moving, understand their movements, figure out the patterns of it, essentially be one with it. Then you learn intuitively or explicitly when this wave is going to rise up and break and where it's going to happen. And then you can catch the wave, right? So you do have to let go of it in order to resonate with the thing, in order to harmonize with it. So that's the analogy that popped up in my mind. And to bring that back into reality, right? When you try to cling to something, you may tend up being a bit too rigid about how you expect it to happen. And that may cause you to not recognize opportunities for it to happen that don't necessarily align with the exact expectation of how you thought it was going to happen. And so there's many paths to a thing, right? Even along this path of fulfillment, we say it's a path, but it's actually many different paths woven together, and you may switch off and switch back and, you know, take go around an obstacle or something like that, or go over an obstacle or through an obstacle. There's just many ways to walk it or run it or swim it or anything. And so we do have to be open to all of those ways. And sometimes it's about doing the way that's most interesting to you, because the one that's most interesting to you is often going to be the one that you excel in. And so, in the vein of not taking things too seriously, we shouldn't forget play in the experience or in the path of achieving our own goals. Because if you're playing, if this is interesting to you, if it's satisfying your own needs, if you're having fun, then you're more likely to continue, right? And when we put too much weight, it can stifle us, because it's then hard to make decisions. Every decision becomes just a magnitude of importance, such that it's hard to know what is the right thing to do. However, you don't need to know the right thing to do, because you can start walking and you can change direction, right? You can start running, then run back the other way, and then take another path that you saw earlier, right? And you can always extract value from every step you make, because as soon as you make a step, you learn something. And this is the idea of the training ground, right? Once we realize, oh, we're actually getting closer to the path we want with every step we take, even if it's the quote unquote wrong step, because we're learning something. And that's going to give us even more tools to hop back on that correct path and walk that correct path. Correct path. Yeah.
Yeah, the path that resonates.
Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Said a lot of words.
That was great, though. I felt like I resonated with it. You're kind of riffing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned a few different things, like how clinging kind of squeezes the life out of things, and how we kind of have to let go to be able to resonate with something,
Mm-hmm.
and how when we don't take things so seriously, when we treat things more like play, we're more open to unexpected opportunities that might arise.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're too clingy, we might have such a fixed view of something that we are blind to all the different opportunities coming around us. And the other thing was play, right? You mentioned how if we're interested and we're playing when we're doing something, we're more likely to continue doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the path of fulfillment. That's a huge part of it, in my opinion, is that we're enjoying it.
Yeah.
And if we're not enjoying it, then is it really fulfilling?
Right.
I'm not sure.
Right.
So play is like a huge, huge one. Even though our culture is so against play and so into work, I think we have to remember that many peoples before us didn't even have that distinction. Like, there was no distinction between play and work. And so we can strive to play while we do what we're interested in. And if we don't cling and take things so seriously, that allows us to have that, bring that spirit of play, allow that spirit of play to come back in,
Mm-hmm.
which is so important for us.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to continue the thing you were talking about, which was taking ourselves lightly, which allows us to, you're talking about decisions and how the magnitude of each decision makes you feel so locked in.
Yeah.
If you're feeling clingy and rigid and taking everything super seriously and like it's the end of the world if this decision isn't right, that can feel super difficult and limiting and a lot of tension there.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we take ourselves a little more lightly and we don't place that much importance, because we understand that this is a training ground, it's a game.
Mm-hmm.
In so many ways, that's the mindset. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about. The other thing, which I think is super important here, is when we don't take ourselves so seriously, we give ourselves room to make mistakes and grow, like what you were saying, which are super important for being on this path. And I want to take the example of this podcast. We're not perfect speakers, as anyone who listens to this knows. However, we didn't let that stop us from starting.
Right.
And starting is the most important part.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we give ourselves space to start and space to learn and space to make mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not taking ourselves so seriously,
Mm-hmm.
that gives us the path.
Mm-hmm.
That gives us space to explore and play and grow,
Mm-hmm.
and have an opportunity to do what we love and share things that we find meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I had to say about that. Did you have any more to say on that specific? We're kind of riffing on like why taking things seriously is so, or why not taking things so seriously is so important.
Yeah. What you were just saying reminded me of just the idea of perfectionism, right? And perfectionism can be valuable. It is a valuable thing. It is a valuable quality. Perfectionists, high-performing perfectionists, produce high-quality things because they set a very high standard. And that's great. You know, these iPhones that people love so much, very seamless to use, I'm sure Steve Jobs was a perfectionist. I'm sure many people working on these products are perfectionists because they want the users to have a great experience. Taken too far can be inhibiting, especially if it causes you to not start or not follow through
Or not even finish.
or not finish.
Yeah.
Because once you recognize you're caught in a loop of perfectionism, you're doing it over and over and over again. It's never perfect. You never get it out. Think about people who never release a song or never put out their art because it's never perfect. It's never good enough. That's when it starts to get inhibiting. And so there is a way to use perfectionism. However, the opposite paradigm, which I fall into, maybe too much, but is just a paradigm of iteration. You try it, notice what's wrong, make it better, keep iterating on it, making it better. Which perfectionists do. However, the difference is I may release each stage, right? We filmed the first episode of the podcast. Not perfect. We put it out. The next one will be better. The next one will be better. The next one will be better. And people are seeing that growth. It's a little more vulnerable, right? But we didn't film 200 podcasts and never put it out in order to get the best podcast. Or you and I both release songs. We don't work on a song for 200 days before putting it out. I know people who do that and still don't put it out. Or make music, are very good musicians, but don't put out music because they don't think it's good enough yet. And that becomes a habit. The it's not good enough yet just becomes a permanent state for someone. They'll get better and better and better and better, but it will never be good enough yet because they're comparing themselves against a more serious standard and they want to be taken seriously and all those things. But if it's just play, put it out, get the feedback, build it with the feedback, you know?
Totally.
Right? So,
yeah, when you aren't willing to be vulnerable because you're taking yourself so seriously, then you miss out on all that feedback.
yeah.
You can practice podcasting in your room all you want, but when you have people commenting and people watching and you're watching your own speaking, you get a lot more feedback, and feedback is where growth happens. We're not trying to just stay the same on this path. We're trying to consistently get better.
Right. Right. And the not taking things in yourself too seriously becomes really important when you start to get feedback.
True.
Right? When you start
That's when those NPCs start.
Exactly. Exactly. That's when the NPC is coming. That's when you start to get negative feedback or criticism or bad comments online, people saying all kinds of rubbish.
I'm not saying all comments are NPCs, by the way.
No one's an NPC. Right? But it can help internally if for certain situations you adopt that model, but use it wisely. Treat everyone with respect.
Everyone is a human being.
Yeah.
True. However, again, when we're not taking things too seriously, then we don't allow these things to penetrate so deeply into our sphere.
Right.
Our energy sphere, and we don't allow them to take energy away from us. We instead can look at them and, as objectively as possible, evaluate whether it's like a legit criticism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because feedback is important.
Mm-hmm.
But when we take it too seriously, it can inhibit us and cause us to not have confidence and not put out that next thing.
Yeah.
Which is not what you want to happen. You want to put out the next thing and make it better from that criticism.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that if you're taking things way too seriously.
Exactly. Exactly. And by the way, a book recommendation I have is The Courage to Be Disliked. I think it's a fantastic book. And it's a presentation of Adlerian psychology. Adler was the contemporary to Freud. Freudian psychology kind of won, in a sense, and became mainstream. Adlerian psychology was kind of in the background, but I found that book extremely valuable. So I really recommend it. Some of the ideas in it describe what you see as your community, or where you find your sense of value and sense of worth, right? And it likely shouldn't be in what other people have to say. So if I find my value and my worth in producing what I believe is good music, then, or in learning, or in something like that, then the value should be judged on, am I getting better at this music? Do I think I'm getting better? Or am I learning? Am I improving? Am I growing? Right? When someone says, yo, you suck, right? Has that detracted from whether or not I've learned? No, then it hasn't changed my thesis or value proposition or anything like that. It hasn't impacted where I gain my value from. And if someone says, you're wrong about this, and this is actually the case, then you can evaluate, am I learning from that? Right? Do I value being correct all the time, or do I value learning? Right? And so it's important to architect a bit and select where we pull our value from, so that we can not be so easily swayed by the wind, or swayed by words, or swayed by things which don't actually truly detract from the value we're getting.
Thank you for that. That book I also read, and yes, I think it's a good. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I think now that we've talked about, why we shouldn't take things so seriously, it's important to at least give people some ideas of how can you not take things so seriously?
Right.
Because it's not just the simple flick of the wrist or snap of the hands and suddenly I'm not taking anything seriously anymore.
Yeah.
It's definitely a practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a practice. And so I thought we could kind of both talk about our own unique ways of remembering to not take things so seriously,
Mm-hmm.
or remembering to, take ourselves lightly,
Mm-hmm.
or such.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to talk about how meditation and spiritual practices have kind of helped me to ground in my own sense of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I often feel that when people have a strong sense of groundedness and they're very aware of their own mental states and such, they can be aware then when they're affected by certain things, and ask and do kind of like an internal therapy. It's like, where is this? Why is this triggering me? Where is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And I think doing that is super important to understanding where the self-worth is,
Mm-hmm.
and who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
Are you just this image of this person that you think you are, that other people think you are? And when they say, oh, Johnny's bad, like, am I Johnny? So that like identity thing of my ego, who I think I am, who I am to other people, if I give a lot of weight to that, it's going to be harder to take criticism if I take that identity super seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And if that identity dies, I die.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like when we do these contemplative practices where we kind of just be without that identity part being super active, we can come into who we truly are, maybe behind that identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that gives us a sense of groundedness where we won't be easily swayed.
Mm-hmm.
Like a tree, we are rooted enough in our own self, in our own being, that we're not uprooted by a wind
Yeah.
of a criticism or such.
Yeah.
I'll stop there. I probably have more to say. However, I wanted to see what you had to say.
Sure. I agree with that. And it may sound woo-woo, but I do think it's really practical, because essentially it's practicing detaching from ourselves, practicing detaching from the identity we have. And that detachment becomes a crucial component of not taking everything too seriously, because you don't identify with it so strongly. And so these spiritual practices, these meditative practices, help us with that detachment, that separation a bit from the ego. So if you vibe with that, try it out. And if you don't, try it out. Yeah.
Amazing. One other thing I wanted to say is often our own inner critics are our worst critics.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're not aware of them, they can really just smash us to the ground and make us feel like crap. However, I feel when we have these mindfulness practices, we've talked about mindfulness before on this podcast, when we have those, we're able to more clearly recognize these thoughts. And when we do, we can ask questions.
Yeah.
Whereas before, if they're just unconscious, we're just believing them, we can't ask questions.
Yeah.
We cannot ask questions. But
Yeah.
now that we're aware of them, we can ask questions, and we can ask, is that really true? Is that thought really true?
Yeah.
And once we start to do that, we start to not take our own inner critic and our own inner monologue so seriously.
Yeah.
And I think that can be insanely powerful.
Yeah.
Because now we're not really taking anything seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And life is a game. Mm-hmm. And now when you do want to go full throttle into something, you're doing it from that place of, this is a game. I love this. This is fun.
Yeah.
This is play. Life is a drama, and the Hindu worldview.
Yeah. Yeah. Bringing things from the subconscious to the conscious is kind of powerful. It reminded me of what you were talking about before the podcast with quantum particles, and once observed, it collapses into a particular state. And you were saying once you're observed, it collapses into a particular state. I think that's the same thing with our thoughts. I feel like not to collapse into a particular state, but observing the thoughts, once we're able to observe them and once we're aware of them, it does change the nature of our relationship to them. And in a sense, sometimes they become weaker, in the sense that it's not just controlling us
Totally
anymore, because we see it and we're like, oh, and then it gets shy. It's like, oh, you're seeing me.
Yeah, we do loosen our grasp. The beliefs, the unconscious beliefs that we have, they do lose their power when we are able to consciously look at them. And when we're able to consciously look at them, then we can really start to play and have our own ideas that might come from a deeper place versus from maybe just your community or your parents. Maybe we can generate things that are more authentically our own when we're able to observe all these different thoughts and ideas and things that maybe we previously thought were us, mm-hmm. that now we're like, oh, I can see that. So then if I can see it, then it's not me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So those are powerful techniques. I mean, the meditation, the awareness, separation from the ego, observing your thoughts. I think having a set of questions too, to ask yourself when you find yourself starting to take things too seriously, can be a good practice. It might take some experimentation and iteration for you to come up with your set of questions. But things that help me, for example, are like, is this going to matter in 10 years? 10 years from now, am I still going to have this much weight assigned to this thing? If not, then I can just, what I've heard some people call future cast. I future cast myself and just step into my future self and adopt that person's mindset, because that person doesn't care about this small thing. Because I expect that person to be doing way bigger things. It's like if you do have a dream and a path, and you think that your future self will be fulfilling that dream, then that can also help to reframe a lot of the things that are happening now. So, am I going to take this as seriously 10 years from now? Or is this, can I learn from this to feed into that dream? How does this fit into the story? So, for example, if I'm experiencing some kind of adversity, then the future casting and what I do sometimes is actually think about how I will tell this story when I'm speaking about how I got here. So when I'm living the dream or whatever, and people are asking me, was it easy for you? Like, I'm like, hell no. Like, all these things happen, and this was the story. And sometimes I just think, I'm just living in that story now, and I'm building up that backstory, you know?
That's fire, dude. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. That
That's
helps me a
amazing.
lot.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Uh, yeah, the only thing I think the set of questions thing, the future casting thing, and this story thing are honestly top tier.
Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I would say is do some philosophy, man, because often I feel like listening to Alan Watts just puts things into a whole nother realm of perspective,
Mm-hmm.
where everything is just a play, a drama.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that gets me into the mind state where it's like, it's all just a drama, a play, a curriculum, a story, whatever you want to call it. It's from that place, I don't need to take any of it so seriously.
Yeah.
Or the realization that you're going to die. That always puts things into perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. In the realm of the death thing, I mean, some people do that. This helps some people. I tried this. This kind of creeped me out. But there's a site called Death Clock, where like you enter in your age, or some stuff about yourself, and it's basically a countdown until when you're gonna die. And
That's
like
crazy.
fucking trippy. It's weird. I like. I'm like, I'm good, but
Damn.
I've heard it works for some people to really just snap them into what's important, seeing that countdown.
Sure.
So if you think that could work for you, go ahead. Uh, Another thing though is thinking about adversity I have experienced or even am experiencing might help put other things into perspective too. Like, for example, if someone is sick, really sick, it's hard for me to worry about what random person X said online. You know, it's just not as important. And so thinking about, okay, what really matters to me, right? Or even thinking, I've been in way worse situations before. This is nothing. These kinds of this is one situation in which I guess it's a comparison, like comparing it to a different experience can soften its weight. It's essentially taking yourself out of this experience and putting it into perspective, right? That that has helped me as well.
Yeah, I feel fulfilled. I feel like we've done this topic justice. I feel satisfied with the things we've said and the examples and the theories and all the information that we just talked about. So I think we are ready for some takeaway questions.
Yeah. All right. So, as you go about your day, week, month, year, life, eternity, we'd like to give you some questions or thoughts to ponder. Mine is, what is what is something that feels really heavy to you right now. It could be something you're currently experiencing or something you have experienced. I'd like you to come up with a set of questions for yourself. Is this gonna matter 10 years from now? Or can this fit into the story of who I'm becoming? Or these kinds of things to help reframe it as less weighty and more of part of the experience of the training ground. And if it really is something grave or very important to you or very valuable to you, how can you use that to put other things you might be putting heavy weight on into perspective? Does that make sense? So if that thing you're thinking about really is grave, then how can you use it to lower the importance of other things that you might have thought were previously grave? Yeah.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is on a similar path. It's how, if you have something that's affecting you right now that's really feels like this thing, like it's a problem, or like I wish I could change it, or it's just like a longing or yearning or you're craving for something, or yeah, something emotional might have happened to you. I want to ask, how does that change? How does your experience of that thing change if you look at it as part of your life curriculum, or part of your life journey, or part of this training ground to make you the best version of yourself? How does that feel in your body? And just sit with how reframing it in that way feels like within your emotional body.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, if you're still here,
There the goat.
you are the GOAT. You know who you are. So thank you so much. I hope this was valuable. If it was, please do us a favor of hitting the like button or sharing it with someone who you think might find it valuable, commenting below, opening up some discussion. We would really love that, to have some discussions in the
That'd be great.
comments, honestly. And so, yeah, if you want to see more, subscribe. We would really love to keep doing this and love to build more of a community around this and help other people walk a path of fulfillment. So, thank you. We're very grateful. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time.
Thank you.